All right.
Hello.
Now, of course, we've got to wait for an audience.
Hello, everybody. This is Rick with Two Brothers Outdoors. Welcome back to our channel. Tonight's discussion is going to be on sawmill services, marketing your lumber, and pricing your lumber. This question came up on one of Eric McVeigh's The Old Jarheads live feed. So everybody's going to introduce themselves, and then when the audience joins us, we will get started.
Hello, I'm Tim with Two Brothers Outdoors.
Eric, the Old Jarhead.
I'm John with Davidson's All Natural Gym.
Ben Bradley with Dusty Ranch.
Michael Wilson with Wilson Forest Lands.
Okay, real quick before anybody joins us here, any of you guys want to put your link up on the chat, just type in sawmill on the chat and your link will come up to your channel.
It didn't work.
Hang on a second. I gotta activate it. There we go.
Not yet.
It takes a second.
Oh, gotcha. Now, the one thing I don't remember last time we did this, I think there's 5. Is that the little thing up on the left-hand services, left-hand side? Is that the number of viewers?
Yes, we have 7 right now, it says, Eric.
Perfect. Okay, we can worry about dropping those sawmill comments afterwards, but we'll wait. We want to wait till we get a few more folks up here.
All right, anybody that's joined us on this live feed, just type in hello and let us know who you are so we know that you're there. We can see that you're there. We just don't know who it is.
One thing about these lives, every live I've done, it's always been that initial few minutes where you're kind of just waiting for folks to join you, because that's the one thing about lives is that once you go live, of course, not everybody's there.
Grizz 27 or 270, I don't care what kind of sawmill it is, as long as it works.
That's right.
Now, is there another? Oh, that's comments right there. Okay, I didn't see the comment section. Hello.
Hello, Paul.
You were doing private chat before, Eric.
Yeah, I was. That doesn't surprise me. I was in my own little world.
We lost somebody.
Hello, Tina.
Steeler B, we got you, Grizz. Okay.
All right, so now the link's working. The Nightbot picked it up, Eric. So anybody that wants to type in sawmill to put their link up there, feel free.
We lost
John
Davidson's Now Natural Gym.
Oh, well, hopefully he can join back in, and he probably will. Illinois. Oh, there you go. So Tina Marshall hangs out at Davidson's All Natural Gym. Well, welcome, Tina. He's here. He dropped out, probably had a internet problem, so I'm sure he'll be back shortly. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Welcome back, John.
Yeah.
I see Paul's here. Good to see you, Paul. We were trying.
I have my foreman with me. Well,
oh, well, that's good. You got to have a foreman.
Got to have a boss.
On. All right. How are we doing now? There's Michael. So
okay, he's back.
I don't have the capability to chat. I can't type anything in there. It wants me to sign up or log in.
That may be the case, but we can.
Are you on through YouTube, Mike, or are you on through Facebook?
I'm on through Chrome.
Yeah, I'm on Chrome, YouTube myself, but that's okay. We can. Rick, you could just put the channels in the description.
Well, as soon as anybody asks a question, Tim can pop it up on the screen.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm a little behind right at the moment.
Tina knows what's on here now.
There we go.
Great sawmill like mine. I love it. Nice. Hey, as long as it works. All right, now we're seeing the comments. Good deal. How many do we have, Tim?
7 still.
All right. You just let me know when you want to start. If we want to start a little earlier, or if we want to go ahead and
We're up to 9, Eric.
9. Oh, 9 is
Hey,
all right. Do we want to get started?
Sure, whenever you're ready.
get you Monday.
All right. Okay. So for those that don't know me, I'm Eric the Old Jarhead, and I had a live last Sunday. And on that live, I was asked a question, actually a couple that I can't answer. And one, I don't like to not be able to answer questions, but if you ever watch my channel, or if you have, you know, or you will know, that all I do is remote sawmilling. I'm only mobile. I don't sell any lumber. I don't buy logs. And because of that, I couldn't answer the questions from my subscribers on how I determine pricing lumber that I mill and sell, or how I go about sourcing logs, because I don't source logs and I don't sell lumber. So what I did is I thought, you know what? I know some great guys with great channels on YouTube that do this, and they do it for a living. They earn a living doing this. So we've got Rick and Tim at Two Brothers Outdoors. So thank you guys for putting this together for me. These are great guys with the channel Two Brothers Outdoors. Rick's got lots of experience milling, not just on his little Hud-son mill. In a past life, he ran a big mill for a long time. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to selling lumber, sourcing logs, that kind of stuff. And then we've got John over at Davidson's All Natural Gym. He also mills and sells lumber and sources logs. We've got Mike from Wilson Forest Lands. I mean, this seriously, you got some heavy hitters here. Mike has his own property, sources his own logs, but occasionally gets them from elsewhere. He sells the lumber he mills. And finally, we also have Ben Bradley, who is an arborist, runs an LT40 Super, had an LT35, mills logs, sells the lumber, and sources the logs. So I wanted to get these guys together to answer these questions for anybody interested, and frankly, for my subscribers who didn't know who wanted that answer, and I didn't know how to give it to them. So that's why we're here today. And we're not just going to limit this to those questions. So if you have questions, don't be shy. Drop them in the comments. Tim can bring them up. But what I wanted to do first is give it back to Rick and Tim, and then we'll just go around the horn. They can talk a little bit about how they figure out pricing lumber. We'll drop to the next guy in the line, get those 4 guys to all answer their own take on how they price lumber, and then we can talk about sourcing logs. By the time we get through that, the sky's open. You guys ask whatever you want, and they'll be able to answer those questions for you. Or if I can, I will too. So, Rick, Tim, take it away. And thank you.
Okay, guys. So I'm Rick with Two Brothers Outdoors, and we don't sell as much lumber as we used to. We do sell quite a bit of lumber. We are limited on what we can get for our softwood. And the reason that we're limited, about 12 miles down the road from us, we have an Amish community. And just about every Amish household has a sawmill. Luckily for us, not all of them sell to the public, but some of them do. So I'm on good terms with a couple of the Amish, and we can go down to the ones that sell lumber publicly, and they're willing to turn over a price list. They let us know what they pay for logs, and they let us know what they get per board foot for their dimensional lumber. The way that we get around the Amish, you can charge a little more, is the ones that do saw for the public. When they get an order for like somebody building a shed or somebody building a barn, and they're presented with a build list, they're 2 months behind. We're not. So we can get a build list and we can get started on it right away. And we charge just a little bit more than what they do because our labor, quite frankly, isn't a bunch of free kids. And we sell a lot of hardwood. We take the trees off of our own property. I go to New York State DEC website. They have a stumpage site. Every 6 months, they update it to let you know what timber sells for on the stump. And the reason for that is so loggers can't gyp landowners. Landowners can go and see what logs are bringing stumpage wise. So we go to that, and what we do is we cut down our trees, we grade them and sell them to ourselves. So before we start anything, we charge ourselves for the tree. And then I go by hardwood market report. Hardwood market report comes out weekly. That tells us how much green rough sawn lumber is selling for. Hardwood only. I haven't seen softwood in there. You may be available, but I only get the hardwood edition. So that's how we price our hardwood, is that I go by the lumber. Now I'm tongue-tied here.
So that's okay. So you really have a couple few methods, and this is interesting because I see Ben nodding his head over there. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mike and John and Ben respond to this. But it sounds like, and a great idea, you're checking with local, whether it's Amish or otherwise, mills to see what they're doing, what they're willing to sell. So that's great. You're looking at stumpage fees so that you know what logs are going to cost if you bought it from somebody else and you're selling it to yourself, which is smart because you're taking your own timber. And you're looking at the fact that your niche is the ability to produce faster than other mills locally. So I think that's great. What about Mike? How do you, now this is, so for those watching this, it's important to understand, you've got upstate New York, and we're now going to go all the way to Southern Oregon, 3,500 miles away, and see what Mike says, which is different. He's not doing a lot of hardwoods, I don't think. So how about you, Mike?
I think I've done 3 or 4 hardwood logs. That was almost a softwood. It was all there. What I do is exclusively softwood, just about. I'm a little bit of a noob when it comes to sawmilling. I've only been doing it since 2020. I wanted a sawmill for a long time, but I never bought one because most of the wood I have is Doug fir and ponderosa pine. You can go to Lowe's, Home Depot, and get a 2x4 traditionally for $3 a board. A 2x6 for what, $5, $6 a board?
Mm-hmm.
To me, it just never made sense to mill it for that price. It always made more sense to put the logs on a log truck, ship them to the mill, the commercial mills. And then if I want the lumber, it would make more sense to ship the lumber to the mills, take that money, go to the store and buy the lumber because just framing lumber is too cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2020, I finally bought a mill. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then, as we all know, the price of framing lumber shot up to 3 or 4 times what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Voila. I'm suddenly in the lumber business. I had a bunch of trees die. So I just all of a sudden became in the full-time lumber business. I'm looking at the prices of Lowe's. They were charging something like $10 for a 2x4.
Mm-hmm.
So I could cut 2x4s for $6 a piece, make a good profit. And I had people beating down my door so they didn't have to pay $10, $13 for a 2x4.
So for your pricing, is there anything specific or particular you do in your price?
Yeah, I look at the price that I could get at the mill for the logs. And then I figure what I could mill them for and make a good profit. And for Doug fir, that comes out to about $1 a board foot.
Mm-hmm.
So I was charging about $8 for a 2x6, 8 foot long. $6.
So your sale price is about $1 a board.
So when the prices shot up, I can make a good profit doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Now prices are down to where they almost were before that, or even lower. You can go to Lowe's, get a 2x4 for less than $4.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not cutting 2x4s anymore. I'm not cutting 2x6s either. So now I have to select special cuts that you can't get at the stores. And I'm still charging about $1 a board foot.
Okay.
Because I figure that's the price that it makes it worth it to mill them myself versus putting them on a log truck and selling them to the mill.
Right. Okay. All right. Now I know that John has done some science. I've seen some of John's videos. And by the way, folks, again, each one of these guys has their own YouTube channel. So be sure to check the description below that Rick will put in there, because you're going to find all these are channels. So now John's done videos specifically on pricing, and I really like those because he takes the time to really discuss the why he charges what he does. So John, when it comes to pricing, what can you tell us without showing us your videos again? People can go watch those. We'll make sure of that. But
need to do another one. I need to do another one for sure on pricing. And but before I get into that, Wilson was just saying, that he's trying to compete with Lowe's, or he doesn't want to compete with Lowe's for framing lumber. And I've always, I don't even care what Lowe's prices is, number one. But number two, I always consider myself, I don't have framing lumber. You think I don't sell 2x4s or 2x6s that you can get at Lowe's. Mine are not planed on four sides. They're not, their corners aren't rounded. This is a square 2x4, rough cut, knotty white pine, or ponderosa pine, or Douglas fir, whatever you got. So I'm not trying to sell this to the people who want to build a house with this furniture. I'm trying to sell this rough cut 2x4 to somebody who wants to make it look good on a rough cut door frame, or make it look like a rough cut table, or make it look like a rough cut something else, whatever they're going to do with their 2x4. So I'll tell you, my price is double what your price is right now. I'm at $2 a board foot, and I have crappy, knotty white pine. But I don't advertise it as framing lumber because knotty white pine's not, framing lumber anyway.
Right.
It's a decorative lumber, and that's who I'm selling it to.
But I know that you've spent time figuring out costs.
So I figure out costs a lot different than most people. I like the idea of selling the logs to yourself. That would probably be cheaper than the way I figure it out for myself. But the most important question is, before you start any of that, is how much does it cost you to mill a board foot of lumber? And people think, oh, I bought my mill and I buy blades and I can cut 500 board feet per every blade, and the blade cost me $26.75, and my mill cost me this, and so that's how much my lumber will cost per board foot. But how did you get your blades to Wood-Mizer? Did you pay for shipping? Is that in your board foot price? Is your gas driving to the post office in the board foot price? Is your, like on the Two Brothers, is your 4-wheeler gas in your board foot price? You got to sharpen your chainsaws. Is that in your board foot price?
You bet.
The one that people forget is the taxes on your land, where your sawmill shed sets, is the taxes that you pay on that figured into your board foot price. Every square inch, well, I don't say inch, I shouldn't say inch. Every square foot that I stack lumber on, I pay taxes on that land, and that is figured into my board foot cost.
Right.
Now, it doesn't add up to much.
That's a very good analysis, John.
Right.
That's a lot to think about. A lot of people don't think about that.
They don't. I have a log yard. My log yard, somebody's got to mow around my log yard. Do I pay the lawn guy to do it? You know what I mean? That's figured in there.
Yep.
Do I spray my log yard with bug spray?
Yep.
Do I spray the grass around my log yard? Do I want to turn on the lights in my sawmill shed? All of that things that people don't even think about needs to be figured into your board foot price. All those things individually are going to be like 0.001 cent or 5 cent, of your board foot price. But when you add all that stuff together, you're like, wow, that's 5 cents a board foot. You know what I mean? That I wasn't charging.
Correct.
Right.
And out of 1,000 board foot, that starts to eat you up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always the hardest for me. That's the hardest question to answer is how much to charge for a board foot. How much does it cost you? And
well, let's see what Ben has to say, because I think we can kind of pull this all together. But how about you, Ben? I know you're a little bit different in your operation, and you're in North Carolina, if I remember correctly. Now, John,
Yeah,
where
that's
are
right.
you at? John, you're
Illinois. Well, yeah.
Illinois, right?
Illinois.
All right, Ben. So Ben's in North Kakalaki. Talk to us, Ben. How do you figure it out?
Yeah, no, I agree with John 100%. Like the fact of if you get looking at lows, then you'll never saw a board again, or at least I wouldn't, especially when 2x4s were $4, $3.20 a board. To be honest, I do exactly what you guys do. I look at what the loggers are getting for the log at the mill. Around here it's about 25 cents. I buy logs occasionally. Got pretty good relationship with some of the local loggers, and recently I bought some logs for about 25 cents a board foot. My cost is 45 cents a board foot to saw. If you were to bring me the logs, that's what I charge to saw and hack it. And then the extra handling, I figure at about 30 cents. So I'm right there at $1 a board foot. If I am fortunate enough to be able to in my tree service business, cut somebody's tree down, I really double dip on that. I'll charge them full price for, and then just like if I was going to take it to the sawmill, I take it to my sawmill, and then I saw it in the boards, and of course, I have time and fuel and blood and sweat and all that jazz wrapped up in sawing more lumber, and then I'll sell it. Typically, my pine goes for $1 a board foot. My hardwoods, depending on how good that hardwood grades, it's anywhere from $1 to $4. Yeah, I mean, it's 100% what John just said. You really cannot look at what the big boxes are doing because they're doing things on a completely different scale for a completely different reason.
So I'd like to add a couple things. So again, I don't sell lumber, but John and all of you made some great points. And one of them, I wanted to kind of show the similarities. So I don't sell lumber, I don't source logs, but I base my pricing on the fact that I'm driving a big dually 4-wheel drive Super Duty, hauling a camper with a sawmill behind it, and all my gear and my chainsaws and my bands and my maintenance. And I've had people ask me the same question about remote milling, and I tell them, well, you can't just say I'm going to charge $20 an hour or $50 or $500 an hour without looking at what kind of investment you have in your business, right? I've got $150,000, $200,000 invested in my business. And how do you recover that? So that's a great point. And I do that, right? I look at what I charge, and I don't charge by the board foot. I'm strictly by the hour. But again, some people have asked me the same question. Can you compete with so-and-so or whatever? And I always tell them, actually, they can't compete with me because the big box store ain't driving 23 miles out of town up a mountain road that goats don't want to walk up and dragging their sawmill up there and turning those logs that were just dragged out of the forest across muddy ground into lumber at this location. They're not going to do that. So they can't compete with me. And I know Mike Mike does very well in his business and his niche. And I know what he's talking about though. And I've had that same similar conversation. And I think it's not a bad gauge sometimes. And here's why. I'll tell you how. I've done hardwood milling for people, and while I don't sell, so I'm not going to look at what the big box store sells their product at for my pricing structure, but I've been to the big box stores that were charging $24 a board foot for walnut, and I love it. I love it because I can say, hey, I can mill this for you. And at the time, I think my rate for milling was about 40 cents a board foot. It's higher today because costs have gone up. But at that time, I was 35, 40 cents a board foot. And I'm going, I can mill this. I can take coffee breaks every 30 minutes and mill this for $1 a board foot. And I'm still saving you $23 a board foot. And yes, it's not kiln dried. It's not plain surface 4 sides and everything else. But I'm sorry. You're saving $23 a board foot or more. So it's worth it. So I think that's awesome. And I think that hopefully those that are going to watch this or are watching this from my channel are kind of seeing something here. And that theme, I think, and you guys can all tell me if you agree with me or not, but the theme is no one's really going to be able to tell you, oh, you should charge 79 cents a board foot, because they don't know your circumstances and it's different. Now, you do have to compete in a sense, but let's be honest. The bunch of us right here, we don't compete. Now, yeah, we're across the country from each other. However, we are all in a separate niche in this very business. And that's something I was thinking about when we were all originally talking, and I thought, here's Rick and Tim. They've got their property. They source their own logs. It's hardwood. You've got Mike, similar, but it's softwoods. You've got me. I don't sell anything. I'm totally remote. I mill whatever the customer has, wherever they have it. Then you got John. He has his own property, but he buys logs and mills them. And you've got Ben, who he can buy logs, or sometimes he gets logs out of his arborist business, all different niches within that sawmill industry. So I think the point is you really have to look at the cost of doing business before you can really get an idea of how much you're going to charge a board foot.
And Eric, can I interject for a second? I think it's important that we also, as a community, kind of know what each other is doing, especially locally. I have, after I bought my mill, I made it kind of a mission to reach out to the local guys that are doing the same thing, and not necessarily to copy them, but so that I would know what the market was needing. Because I have, I'll be honest, I'm probably one of the more expensive guys in the area, but I still have people bring their logs to me because I offer some extras that the other guys don't.
Sure. I would also like to reiterate on what Mike said about, he said he's not sawing 2x4s and 2x6s any longer. We're constantly switching up. We chase the money, we chase the market. Back during the pandemic, it surprised us, but everybody wanted to be a woodworker, and we were selling live edge. We were selling live edge hardwood like it was going out of style. We sold so much, we paid for 2 tractors and 2 mills in less than a year. Then that market now has just about come to a halt, and we picked up on dimensional lumber, 2x6s, 2x8s, 2x10s, and we're able to still beat the Home Depot prices on that. But right now we're gearing up to start sawing siding, batten boarding. And the reason we're going to saw batten boarding is because you cannot go to Home Depot, you cannot go to Lowe's, and you cannot buy batten boarding for what we can sell it for. And you can't put plywood up for as cheap as you could put batten boarding up. So we're going to get a bunch of that stocked up and then start advertising it. And I think that'll draw in a lot of business, the siding alone. But we're constantly switching gears to follow the market.
That's a great
comment on that.
Yeah.
Maybe add or just confirm it. When I was talking about competing with Lowe's and Home Depot, that's back in the pandemic when prices were so high. I could be half their price. And that's when I made the bulk of my lumber, was during those times. Right now, I'm just not cutting as much lumber because price of lumber, softwood lumber, is low. But I follow the trends. There for a while, it was 1x6s. I could get almost $1.50 for 1x6s.
Yep.
I could cut a 2x6 and get $8, or I could cut it in half into 2x6s and get $12 for both.
Exactly.
Or that was for a while. Then people were wanting 6x6s, and I could get $2 or more per board for that. I was selling those for a while, and then people weren't wanting those anymore. So I do follow the trends. I also do a lot of market testing. I'll throw things out, advertise them, and see what people are buying. I'll put the price high. If nobody's buying them, then I'll drop it a little bit, and I'll try to find that sweet spot. I do a lot of market testing and see what the market will bear. but I make sure that I'm getting enough to make it to justify milling instead of selling the logs to the mill.
I see
Now,
John
Grizz,
nod his head right there a lot.
Grizz 270, he just put on here, for me, there's no money in selling lumber. I mill and cut a kit for sheds. And that's a great idea. But unfortunately for us, with the Amish nearby, they cut kits and sell sheds. Matter of fact, they don't cut kits, they build sheds. And
Wait.
Yeah.
Wait. Put Desert Hobo up. There. Desert Hobo, thanks for joining us, buddy. This is Sunday night.
Wait, hang on,
awesome.
hang on. I've got some kind of nice pants on. I don't know if they're yoga pants, but
Oh, there's your yoga pants.
I've got some chainsaw pants. They count.
You're lucky we all have pants.
Hang out, Desert Hobo. So if Desert Hobo is a subscriber to any of your channels, if you are Desert Hobo, let us know. But he's been a longtime subscriber of mine. Absolutely great guy. So I'm glad he's here. Thanks for joining us.
I always enjoy the Desert Hobo's
I
comments.
saw John nodding his head a lot when Mike was talking about the 1x6s and then going to 6x6s, and so you were smiling and nodding your head a lot.
Yeah, I mean, when the 2x4s were $10, you know, I sold my inventory 3 times. You know, I sold stacks, and I got 30 stacks of lumber I can stack up here, and I sold them 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
When the 6, I don't know when your 6x6 craze was, but when mine was, you know, I was selling $10,000-$20,000 worth of 6x6s. You know what I mean? Just as fast as I could cut them. I don't know why people would put. I don't know what if it was gazebos. One guy was putting up a barn, but 6x6s were crazy. I didn't do a bunch of 1x6s, but those 2x4s and 2x6s, when that lumber price, you know, shot up, was crazy. And when the plywood price, like Tim was saying, when the plywood price is crazy, board and bat, you know, was nuts. You know, I was selling board and bat like crazy, and I still do some board and bat, but that was a crazy, you know, time. People were like, I can't put up plywood, but I can put up board and bat, you know? So I agree with every one of those. You've got to, the problem is what's right, but what's coming. The problem is what's coming next month.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah.
If you can tell me, is it going to be, you know, 8x8s, or is it going to be 10x4s? You know what I mean? What's coming?
That's an interesting question, and we should talk about that. But I wanted to check with Ben a little bit here because he was piping in there as well. Are you seeing that same pattern?
Oh yeah, I mean it's like John said. You know, really you've got the waves there. You know, when lumber was crazy, 2x4s were insane. It's funny that it seems like when I have an ample supply of hardwood, people want pine, and when I have an ample supply of pine, people want hardwood. And you never really can figure out the you know, how much to keep in stock. And I try my best to cut to order. I don't like to have a lot on my yard. I'll try to keep a little bit of everything, but I try to cut to order. Because I don't like waste, and I don't have a lot of storage area. But, you know, like you said, it's funny to see how people want live edge for 6 or 8 months, and then all of a sudden you have people that want dimensional lumber. I have a lot of repeat customers, and I try my best to keep those guys happy because they're pretty much my bread and butter. A bunch of farmers that, you know, are constantly having down logs and that sort of thing. But yeah, the trend is definitely there, and I wish that we had a magic ball to look into to tell the future.
Well, you were saying that you know, following the trend and the waves, you know, we custom cut, and we're fortunate enough to have the property to have the hardwoods to cut. But we were doing like mantles for people, planters. planters have hit like crazy this year. So I mean, we try and diversify and cut whatever the customers are requesting from us, and we have the luxury to be able to do that. Go up, cut a tree, bring it down, cut it for them, and of course, we explain to them about being green and everything. But that's kind of what's gotten us to this slow period.
Right.
Yeah, another thing we'll do too is like if we have a hardwood log, sometimes we'll take a hardwood tree down, and we just took down a hard maple. We sold the base log this morning to a old school woodcrafter who actually splits logs he builds Windsor chairs. It's incredible to watch him. But he bought the log, so we have logs left over. He does want some lumber, so we'll use one of those logs to saw into lumber for him. But the rest of it, we're going to saw into 5/4 by however wide we can get it, probably 6-8 inches. I will stack that up in a dry spot, and then I will advertise it as a lot. In other words, buy the whole lot. We'll knock a few cents off per board foot, but they have to buy the whole thing together. And we do sell a lot like that. Some of these furniture builders and stuff, they jump right on that real quick.
Right on. Well, I was going to say that, again, a little different, but for me, there really is no trend and there's no waves. So it's interesting to hear that kind of perspective. And I'm listening to you guys thinking that's really part of what you do is riding those waves. Whereas for me, every customer seems to want different things. They're either wanting to build a barn, or they're building a cabin, or they're building a fence, or they're refinishing an old house, or they're going to do flooring, and so they've got black locust or whatever. So for me, it's always very different. But I'm thinking that from a future crystal ball standpoint, you could use the woodworking guys, maybe not, on like Instagram, places like that. I know Ben's there. I don't know if Mike and John and Rick and Tim are there. I am, by the way. I don't post very much, but I am there. But I'm just kind of thinking that other than kind of trying to keep track of social media and see where it's going, I can't imagine how you ride those waves, because it would seem like you're always playing catch up. So I don't know, Rick and Tim, are you guys always playing catch up?
We're fortunate enough to stay ahead of the market. Like you said, we're on social media a lot. We see what people are trending, and we have a good customer base. We have a customer base that they change up their needs quite often, and they come to us. Now, another thing too, you were talking about somebody fixing up an old house. Up here in the Adirondacks, we have a lot of old farmhouses that date back 200 years. And back then they used 2x4s, an actual 2x4. So when they're fixing a wall or they're repairing the house, they need beams and they need 2x4s that are cut to match the rest of the house. And that's one thing we're lucky with too, that we can do that for them.
Mike, you've got probably some of that too, especially in Southern Oregon.
Yeah, I've had that too. I've had people fixing up an old house. They go to Lowe's and they need a 2x10, so they go to Lowe's and they get a 2x12 and they cut it into an exact 10 inches. But they're so glad when they find my mill and they find I can give them lumber that matches the exact lumber that's in their house. And back to trends. One of the common comments I get on YouTube is about drying my lumber. Do I dry my lumber? I don't. One of the reasons I like selling it green is because I don't know what the trend's going to be. Like it was either John or Ben or both of you said, you cut some lumber thinking people are wanting that because that's what they wanted. Then you cut a bunch of it. Now they want something else. And then I'm stuck with a bunch of lumber that people aren't buying now. They all want something else.
That's not the first time I've heard that from an Oregon sawyer, by the way. Yeah. There was a guy in La Grande who cut 1,000 board feet a week. And when I was there, and I mean 1,000 a week with an LT40, I'm thinking, well, that's 2 hours. What are you doing the rest of the week, right, Ben? But you know what he told me is he said, I cut true dimension 2x6s. I bring in a logging truckload, a short load of logs, which is about, or no, it was 1,000 a day. That's what it was. But he brings in a short load of logs, mills up 1,000 board feet a day, and he green stacks them. They're not stickered or anything. And I asked him, how come you're not stacking and stickering? And he said, because the ranchers will buy it before it starts to mold. I said, really? He goes, oh yeah, that stack, it'll be gone tomorrow. And it never dries his lumber. It's out the door as soon as he makes it.
To address what Grizz was talking about, that there's no money in lumber, right now, in my area at least, there's not a lot of money in lumber. Lumber, Doug fir prices are small. It's small. It's low, I mean. I can sell lumber. I can sell it. I do move it, but it's tough right now. So right now, I'm not focusing on lumber much. Basically, the lumber I'm cutting right now is what is being shown on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I'm focusing on other things now. Now's the time to hold on to my timber when prices are low. Wait for prices to go back up.
So
part of being an entrepreneur is being flexible. If the price of one product is down, have something else you can focus on.
Right.
I'm just curious with everybody in here. How do you get your word of mouth, get your lumber sales? Through word of mouth, through advertising, through Facebook, Craigslist? I mean, we've had pretty good luck with Marketplace on Facebook. But I was just curious on what everybody else does. Word of mouth, or what do you guys do?
Facebook and a lot of Craigslist, but I get a lot off of Facebook.
What about Ben over there? He's been quiet.
No, I would say probably 85% of mine is word of mouth.
Really? You know, it's funny you guys say Facebook, and I know John needs to answer this too, but you know, people ask me about advertising my business, and I tell them I never got a single job off Facebook. I get 90+% of the work if I'm actively sawing off of Craigslist, believe it or not, or the Wood-Mizer Pro Sawyers list, or the WSU Eastern Washington Small Sawmills list. So I don't even bother with Facebook because it never did any good for me. But what about you, John?
90% of mine has got to be word of mouth.
Wow.
I've got you know, whatever, a couple thousand business cards. You know what I mean? And that is my expense for marketing. Facebook Marketplace is great, but when you sell one 6x6, in order to sell one 6x6, you've got to answer 47 questions of, is this still available? You know, and I'm milling all day, and 47 questions at 5 o'clock when I'm done milling is yes. And I'll be there Tuesday, to pick it up. And I'll be there Tuesday to pick it up. And I'll be there. Right. And 20 out of 21 of them don't show, so 90% of mine, is somebody drives by and sees that I've got 6x6s in the yard, and he tells his buddy, who tells his buddy, that they know where a bunch of 6x6s are, or it's the business card word of mouth. It's the, when I sold to one of my best sales was $50 to the garbage man, but the garbage man sees everybody, and I've got, 17 referrals from the garbage man. And
that's funny. It's funny you say that, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can't help do this. Mike did a video not too long ago about small customers, and I want to hear, because what John just said is almost exactly what you were saying in very similar anyway in that video, where you've got a customer that wants one board, but turns out, tell us about that.
Yeah, when I have a unique situation, most of the time I'm up in the mountains where my mill is, and I just don't have customers up there. It's not a good place for customers to go. But I rent a warehouse in town from a trucking company. It's not the best place to meet customers, but I come into town a couple times a week, and I tell people when I'll be there. Well, this one day, I only had one person who was going to show up for a $10 board. And I was thinking, I was in the area, but it's going to take me a half hour to go in there, meet her, and sell this $10 board. but I told her I'd be there because I thought other people were going to be there and they canceled, but I told her I'd be there. So I'm going to be there. I sold her the $10 board. Then she was asking if I could cut another size for her, another $10 board. I told her I'll do it, but I'll have to come back next week and do it. Well, she came back with her husband. He started looking around. I had all this moldy pine. It didn't get stickered. It was molding. I was having a hard time selling it. By the time it was over, he ended up buying about $3,000 worth of it.
I was going to comment on that video right there that you were just talking about, because I watched that and I thought, if you just take those, when you come into town once or twice a week, just grab a cap cut and bring it into town and put a little sign on it that says free. You know what I mean? And cut it. If it's 8 foot, cut it in half at a 4 foot thing and put it out there on your sidewalk that says free. And yeah, you're going to spend an hour talking to that guy while he's picking up that free board. You know what I mean? But he's probably got 17 crafter friends who need lumber too.
I don't have a place where there's free traffic.
Okay.
But you could put an ad on Craigslist for free leftovers, free odd pieces, or discount lumber as a lost leader just to get people to come in.
Yeah, I was just thinking your warehouse was like, maybe in a business district or downtown or something where it had foot traffic. I don't know.
No,
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not.
Okay.
I've seen some of his videos where he talks about how it's almost inconvenient. He was lucky to get that place, right? You had a heck of a deal, but it's really not like in the middle of anywhere that anybody's going to be to come look.
So commercial buildings are hard to find around there because the pot growers rent them all out and they grow pot in them.
Right.
So I was lucky just to find that place.
And and I don't know about Rick and Tim. You guys you're kind of out of the way too, aren't you?
Yeah, we're not too bad out of the way. We're on top of a mountain, but we're only like 9 miles from town, so it's not real bad.
And what about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm on a secondary road. We're kind of out in the county, but it's pretty heavily traveled secondary road that's it's a shortcut into South Carolina. So a lot of people travel it, and I feel like that's where a lot of John had mentioned the guy that passes by. I get a lot of those guys pass by, and their next break as they drive by and see the 2x6s I'm cutting for somebody, and they're back by the next day, or even just whip it around in the neighbor's driveway there.
Yeah, being seen probably helps. And John, you're not too far out of the way, right?
I am. My closest neighbor on either way is a half mile. I'm 5 miles. I'm 5 miles from town and 20 miles from Walmart. So I'm out there.
You don't have the Walmart traffic. You're trying to say.
Yeah, no, I don't have the Walmart traffic. But even the semis, the farmers, everybody's got to pass by somewhere. And it's not like it's an out of the way road or 10 miles up the mountain or anything. It is a traveled road to get from point A to point B. So it's got some traffic on it.
Yeah, my location, if I was going to sell anything, it would have to be finished product, appealing finished product, because we built the house in a kind of the suburban area, sort of. It's old farmland just outside of the city limits.
Right.
But
no, that's right.
It's just not. I won't even mill at my place because if I mill everywhere else. So I'm not gonna mill at home. I have put a little sawdust in the driveway. I did one video about a little short 3-foot chunk of maple I did. But that's it. That's all I've milled in my driveway, other than using my LT40 as a big ripping saw. But all right. Well, I think we kind of talked a little bit about sourcing logs, and I think that message is out there. But I wanted to kind of make sure we touched on that real quick before we should really ask the audience what questions they have. But so again, just because this was asked on my channel, it's not something I can answer. And you all kind of talked about it a little bit, but the question really was, what ideas do you have, or how can you source logs? So I know you have your own, but I think you guys all may have ways of getting logs as well. So maybe you could bring that up real quick, just kind of run through that. And then I think we give it back to Rick and Tim and let them get the audience to ask some questions, and then we can go from there.
I would say build relationships with loggers.
Well, one thing we do, we live on a very secondary road. Most people up here own very large tracts of property, so we generally have a logger on the road working. Right now we have 2 loggers on the road working. So if there's something we need and we don't have, I could stop in, talk to the logger, and work out a deal for some logs, and then we'll just take our log archers down and bring the logs home ourselves, which saves us a lot of money because he doesn't have to truck them to us. But back in the day when I had the big mill, we did have loggers coming in, and we did buy logs, quite a few actually. And you have to become a destination, but you also have to be careful not to overpay or underpay, because the first time you underpay for logs, that logger's not coming back.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
Well, I'm almost exclusively off my own land. I've taken a few from my neighbors just to help them get rid of them. I kind of reluctantly took a few of their logs just to help them out. But I mostly bought a mill not to be in the lumber business, but I bought the mill as a timber forest land management tool. Something to do to thin out my timber, something to do with dying logs. But I think I could get a lot of logs free if I wanted to. I put my ads out, and I get contacted all the time by people saying, "Hey, I have a dying pine tree on my property. Do you want it?" Or we're taking out the arborists are taking out some trees off our property. Would you be interested in them? Or would you mill them for me? Or would you pay for them? Most of the time, they just offer them for free.
Well, I have to tell you, that's 100% accurate. And here's how I know. There's a gentleman who may or may not be watching named Lowell, who's another Marine, who lives about 80 miles east of me, and he has an LT-15 as well. And he sources all of his logs that way, and they're almost always free. So absolutely, that is a great answer, because and I hadn't even thought of it until you brought it up. So what about you, John and Ben? I know Ben's an arborist, but John, I swear I've seen a logging truck load of cedar going your way. I'm sure of it. So how do you get your logs?
So, I mean, cedar, I can't get around here at all. I can get a little juniper bush, in somebody's yard, and that's it. And it's about 4 inches round. So, yeah, I bought a load of cedar logs from Missouri, and I don't know anything about buying logs. I wish I had my wife is in the Adirondack Mountains, and every year I go up there and watch logging trucks go by there all the time, and I wish I had logging trucks.
Hold up. Rick, I see a collaboration. I see a collaboration right there.
Yeah, we'll be up in the Adirondacks in like June, July.
What part of the Adirondacks you go to, John?
We're up by Glens Falls. We're up that way.
Not far from us.
Oh,
Not
really?
too awful far.
Nope.
Well, we'll have to hook up.
Eric, you don't understand, Eric. When somebody says they go to the Adirondacks, you have no idea how large the Adirondack Park is.
Rick, I'm from the Northwest. I grew up in British Columbia, where it's more than 1,000 miles from the beginning to the top of the province. So I do understand.
Okay.
I mean, I'm on the West Coast. I'm only one state next to Mike. It would just take me a whole day to get there.
Understood.
How about you, Ben? What about? So I know you're an arborist, so I've seen some of your video. By the way, I've gotten old. I ain't climbing 200 feet up into a tree, so kudos to you. I
try not to climb anymore. I try not to climb much. I've got this nifty little thing right here.
I want you to answer a question though. Did you say the little chicks or not?
The chicks.
Yes. Did you cut that tree down or did you save them?
Oh, I saved them. Yeah. No, I didn't cut it down. We just cut the limb off. Yeah. Sorry. I was like, what is he talking? Oh, yes, the video the other day. Indeed. Yeah, they're
If you
still,
guys
the
haven't
eggs are
seen
still
it,
in the nest.
if you haven't seen this video, Ben's up in a tree. I don't know how high up he is, but he's up in a tree and he sticks his camera into this hole, big old knot hole in the side of the tree. And there's these little chicks inside this tree. And I'm going, are you going to cut that thing down with those birds in there? And then he cuts the video off because he didn't want us to see him down at the bottom with his big chainsaw, right? Ring, ding, ding, ding.
No, that the limb was all that came off of that tree. But no, to be honest, man, the reason I got into the arborist business was exactly what we just talked about. I had people coming to me after I bought my mill. I've got this 100-foot pine tree beside my house, like 3 foot away, that I want you to cut down for the log. And I would go look at it and I would think, yeah, I can cut it down, but if anything goes wrong, the log is worth about $20. The damage would be worth about $20,000. So I actually kind of backed into the arborist business, went ahead and got my license, my insurance for that, and started doing that. And really until the past maybe 2 years, pretty much every log that I've ever sawed was either free or was a custom saw job. But really in the past 2 years, I've been trying to cultivate some relationships with loggers. And like already has been said, you don't want to ever make those guys mad if you want to continue getting logs. So a lot of times I'll pay them a little more for the logs because I know I can get it out of it. And I'll also, show up because I don't have a loader. So I've got a skid steer, I've got a flatbed trailer, and I've got some of these guys that will bring a half load of logs back to their shop and give me a call and say, hey, we've got, some pines, or hey, we've got some cedars, or we pretty constantly they have some low grade hardwood. But yeah, it's a relationship that takes some cultivation. At least it has on my end, because those guys can take logs to the big mill all day long.
Absolutely. And relationships, honestly, I think all you guys know, I've been doing this for over a dozen years. And so I want to talk just a minute about relationships. And obviously there's some relationship going on right here, right? Because I know you guys, but I'm busted up, and I'm busted up more than I care to admit. And here's a little inside scoop for my subscribers that happen to be watching this. My mill's not running right now either. And so I have some customers that I couldn't get to. But what I did is I reached out, and one of my viewers, Jerry, Skookum Sawmill out of Yakima, I got a job for him. And I had another couple customers that another guy I know, Sawyer, up around the Coeur d'Alene area, goes by Crossroads on Forestry Forum. I asked him if he could come in and help out. And that's kind of part of this business, because without those relationships, you could find yourself in my shoes where, you know what, this is a tough job. You can get hurt. And my back is out. I got a bad disc. I hope to be back in action soon, but right now I have to take it easy. And so you got to have those relationships, but also because, and for those watching, if you're just watching us now and you don't know the faces on the screen here, you've got some, and everybody here is a YouTuber, but you've got a lot of experience here right on the screen right now. And again, I'm learning something from you guys because I don't sell lumber, but if I ever decided to, I know all I got to do is talk to the right people, see what you guys are up to, watch your channels, just talk directly to you. I know Rick's he's done more lumber. He's not a Jake Dean. If you guys know Jake Dean, he's milled millions upon millions and millions of board feet of lumber with an LT70. And I think he might have started on a 40. But Rick, you've milled a hell of a lot of lumber over what,
Yes.
20-year period. So Rick has done a huge amount of sawing as well on a big mill. And so you're absolutely right. And whether it's, and I'll tell you, another aspect to that, and we need to get to questions here. So I need to shut up and quit being the old jarhead and let Rick and Tim take over. But you also got to build relationships with your customers, because that's also a big part of this, right? I'm always trying to tell people repeat customers are gold in this business, because if you can keep your customers happy, a lot of times they're the ones that are going to call you back. And I'm sure it's got to be the same for you guys. If you're selling lumber, you keep your customers happy, they're coming back. Well, it's the same with the loggers, right? You make those relationships, you build those, you treat people right, they're going to take care of you, right? So,
well, that's a good point, Eric, about just the community of sawmillers. We're a pretty tight knit community. Back when I had the big mill, I would have other mills bring me like big oak logs that they couldn't saw on their bandsaw, and there was a couple of bandsaw mills that would take on orders, a build list for a barn, and get overwhelmed, and they call me up, hey, can you give me a hand with this build list? And absolutely we could. And not only did it put money in my pocket, but it also allowed us to help out them, and they would in turn help us out if we needed it. A lot of times they'd call me up and say, hey, I got a real nice cherry log somebody dropped off. I don't need it. Would you like to have it? Because they knew we were selling truckloads of cherry at the time. Sure, absolutely. I'll come get it,
right.
And it's a tight-knit community. We all help each other out.
Yep. And by the way, for those watching that heard me just say that I had to get someone else to do some milling for me, don't worry. I'm going to be filming them. So there'll still be some videos coming out. All right. I see that Paul asked a question here, and you know what? I was kind of hoping we'd get Paul in here, but Paul's got a question there. You guys can answer it. I can't. So take it away. Maybe Rick and Tim, and work around the table.
All right. Our sawdust, it gets dragged down to the backfield with the back blade on the tractor, fill in low areas with it, which we have plenty. The waste that comes off the logs, we stack them in a rack, and when the rack gets full, we saw it into 18-inch lengths, and then we advertise it for $25 for a pickup load, and people come get it. They have to load it themselves. We're not going to load it, but it seems to move it pretty good, and we get $25 out of it.
Right on.
I'm a pretty small time producer, so I don't produce a lot of waste. Some of you saw my video where I had a very unique use for my sawdust pile.
Wait, was that the ski hill?
Yeah, I used it for a snowboard hill. And I can tell you, sawdust makes a lousy ski slope.
Yeah, we use that for anti-skid.
But a lot of people enjoyed that video, and I think what they enjoyed most about it was watching me crash and fall. That's mostly what I did.
Well, that's so Jason over at Northwest Sawyer, and I'd love to get him on one of these. Did you see his video where he crashed and burned on his new electric mountain bike?
No.
It's in the mud.
I did a video about what I do with my waste. The sawdust goes on the garden, but the bark goes on the garden. I cut some of my slabs, the bark slabs, into firewood. Lately, I've been giving the rest of my neighbors to use for firewood. I'm still trying to find a practical use for it. But the other day, somebody contacted me, and he paid $5 a piece for just the bark edge slabs. He wanted a dozen or so of them. Right. He was making a retaining wall and wanted to use those. Every once in a while, people contact me wanting either for, some of them want it for siding, mm-hmm. like log cabin siding. Mm-hmm. But I have to tell them the stuff that I produce is pretty rough.
You know, pine bark is great for gardens, actually. For your my brain is fading on me.
Like mulch.
Mulch, yes, thank you. Pine bark is great for mulch.
I do a combination of bark and sawdust, and I can go a lot of the summer without watering because it holds water so well.
Now, where are you at? Are you near Klamath?
Medford area.
Medford. See, that's guys. For those that don't know, the West Coast, you know, everybody thinks of it as a bunch of green, tall trees and raining all the time. Medford is hot and dry. I was born in Grants Pass, so If you didn't know that, Mike, you know,
Yeah, you told me one
Grants
time.
Pass is like 30 miles out of Medford. That is a hot. Medford's worse than Grants Pass. It is hot and dry out there.
I have a video about that too.
We'll have to check it out. I mean, okay. How about you, John?
The sawdust goes to I put some in low spots. I got plenty of those, even though I don't have any mountains. But I've got it in 3 different piles right now. Number one, I'm burying it in the garden. I'm trying like a 6-foot pit, down in the garden. What happens to it down there? I don't know.
Well, I saw you did a compost video.
Yep, I do a normal compost pile, a proper compost pile, where you mix your leaves and your grass clippings and your chicken manure with it, and it turns to compost really quick. Turns to dirt real fast. And then the third pile that I'm doing is just sawdust and the bark and everything that falls off in the log yard. I rake it into one big pile, and it is taking a lot longer to turn to dirt, just being just sawdust. But man, you mix some leaves and some grass clippings with it, and it's dirt the next year. I was really surprised at how fast it'll turn to dirt. And the cap cuts, I have like some of the rotten ones, the rotten pine ones, I burn in my own personal fire pit just for my own. I burn in a fire every time I'm milling. I just love a smoke fire in the background when I'm milling. And that's all rotten pine. The regular pine slabs, they're $25 a pickup load. You load them. I don't cut anything. If they're 8 foot, you've got to deal with that. If they're 16, you got to deal with that too. I don't do anything. I don't touch them. Nothing. And I've got like 6 of those out there right now, and that's it. Everybody's bought every one of them. The walnut or the cherry slabs or the maple slabs, those will be sold. I will cut those, and those will be sold to campers, as campfire wood.
Mm-hmm.
And then the oak or the hedge or the Osage orange slabs, those go right in my house and heat my house all winter long. I never have to cut firewood anymore, split firewood anymore. It's all cap cuts from oak or Osage orange or another hardwood hickory.
Right.
Something like that would be fine.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah. So the sawdust, I've actually got a couple guys right now that want some for their garden. I'll try to scratch up some for them. The beauty about the bandsaws, man, is they make such fine dust. Sometimes it just blows away. But what doesn't blow away, I take it. Yeah, right. Absolutely. What doesn't blow away, I normally take down to my burn pit, and that's where I typically take my pine cap cuts also. And I'll try to about once a month, I'll have me a pretty large burn pile and light that sucker up and let her go. As far as the hardwood caps, I'll sell some of them for firewood, but typically I try to wait until the absolute hottest day in the summer, and I cut them into like 16-inch pieces and put them in this little shed right here for my heater house. But it's got to be the hottest day, otherwise it wouldn't burn.
So, Jim, I don't know if you saw Pat's question, and I'd like to answer Pat. And Pat, honestly, I'm gonna tell you something crazy. I've got a $23 special off of Amazon. I can't even remember the name, but then I don't sell lumber, so it's less important to me. I think these guys might be able to answer that a little bit better. But honestly, I use the little cheap. It's like gray. Stick it all the way in the wood as deep as I can and see what it's at. But I don't really care because out here where I'm at, much like where Mike's at,
I don't really care.
It's very hot and dry. And I can air dry lumber down to below what a lot of kilns air dry softwoods to. So I don't really worry about it too much. I can have in 8 weeks, I can have ponderosa pine or Doug fir down below 16%. And I know my son's sawmill way up north, they shoot for 15% for construction grade. So I don't know, Paul and Tim, what do you guys use for a moisture meter?
I use it's a cheapy one like you have, Eric, from Amazon.
Mhm.
It's a Munzo, and it's just basic moisture meter. I mean, nothing special about it. But here again, we sell mainly green wood. I mean, so we really don't bother ourselves with the moisture.
Right.
If a customer wants dry wood, which the box that we store wood in has got fans blowing across the wood and the wood stickered, so it does dry out. But if a customer wants to know the moisture content, he has to bring his own moisture meter. We don't offer up hey, it's at this or at that.
Right. What about you, Mike?
I'm pretty much the same way. I don't even have a moisture meter. I try to sell it before it has a chance to dry. If I happen to have dry lumber, it's only because that lumber didn't sell. I don't worry about moisture meters.
I love it.
I use gravity. I pick up the lumber, and if it's light, yeah, it's dry. It's not light. That's my moisture meter.
Right on. What about you, John?
I wish I knew the name of mine. I think I have 3 of them. You know, one's a cheapie, and one's an $80 one, and one's a more expensive one. They all 3 have the prongs that you can poke into the wood to get the proper moisture, and one of them reads it by the surface. They say you can just scan the surface and it'll tell you what the moisture is, like an inch under the wood. But I don't believe that surface one just doesn't work. It works for crap, because the prongs, all 3 of the other prongs will tell me something else. The one that scans across the surface will be different from all the other 3.
Well, and I'd like to get Ben's answer too, but before you answer, Ben, one of the things I will tell you is that I know the best way to get the moisture on any piece of wood is to drive 2 of the thinnest nails you can find right into the middle of that piece of wood, and then either use wire to wrap the nails and then the prongs on the moisture meter, or if you can connect the moisture meter to those directly. But wire works very well. And when I built myself what I call a sorta solar, it's that sorta solar kiln, that actually worked pretty well. But what about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm like John. I couldn't tell you the brand name of mine. It's sitting in the console of my truck, and I think I pull it out about twice a year. Because same thing. I'm selling it used.
Right. Let me make a commitment for you to Rick. So Rick, I will get the brand I'm using, and I will text that to you so that you can put it down in the description below. And then maybe if the other guys do that too, or in your own videos. So of course you can do that too. But so Pat, I'm not sure which channel you came to us from. Maybe you watch us all. Hopefully you do, right, guys? But we'll make sure.
Hopefully not. Holy cow, that'd be a nightmare, wouldn't it?
Okay, so we got a question up from Grizz 270. He's talking about his Douglas fir logs are pretty straight, and he's thinking about 2-inch thick slabs to make into log siding. I tried that years ago with the big mill. The problem is the edges of the slabs are so thin and they're not uniform. So if you're going to do that, at least cut them the same width and get a flat edge so that when you butt them up as log siding, they look straight and they look like they're interlocking.
I think you'd want to mill those parallel to the deck as well, right? So,
yes.
You're not going to center the pith. You're going to level the log. So
correct.
Same height back to front. That's the only way you could do that. Now you could do that and rotate it, get your 4 slabs, and then you could edge those, I suppose, on the mill. Because I think you're right. You need to have at least kind of a flat side. But you could do it. I do know that there are folks that love that log siding look.
Right, but you have to, like you said, you have to edge the sides so that they're all uniform and they have a place to butt up together. Because without doing that, the edges are too thin. We tried.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you guys, I mill for myself on my own property. So I don't sell lumber. I'm remote, all that stuff. But I started milling for my cabin. I thought about that, but because I got into production sawing, and I'm sure Ben and John would agree with me on this because they run bigger production mills like I do, but you're moving, and you got a mission. So I pull caps off. That's it. They're firewood. I'm not going to waste time on it because I look at that and I think that's going to take me too long to mess with. I'd rather center the pith. And again, I'm doing softwoods 99% of the time. So I'm going to center the pith, hooks to the right, knock off the top, roll it 90, knock off the top, set my height, roll it again, bang, 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 roll it up and go. And that's my mission every time. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's the mission. So I wouldn't, it would take me too long for me to personally do it, unless that was something I wanted to do for myself, or if someone was going to pay me a lot of money to do it.
I could tell you right now, I was spoiled with the big mill of having resaws and edgers. One of the worst things we have to do is cut flitches. I can't stand cutting flitches, but yet can't throw the wood away. We spent
cutting flitches.
We spent an hour and a half today cutting flitches, cutting 1x8.
I watched a video where Mike was doing everything possible but cutting the flitches.
That flitch video is one of my most popular recent videos. A comment to what Grizz is talking about, the Doug fir logs and making the round cuts on them. I think Grizz is just a little north of me. A lot of times we have Doug fir where they grow up thick and they grow up tall and straight, and there's very little taper to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of material, I have a lot of that. And once I'm done cutting up dying trees, I want to experiment with that, because I think I can cut those kind of pieces. There's hardly any taper to them. But ones that where there are taper, you have to sacrifice some of the middle to get a uniform piece out of that.
Right.
Edge piece. And by the way, I'm getting a kick out of some of Grizz's comments. Him and Desert Hobo, they both comment on my channel, and I always get a good laugh out of them.
Desert Hobo is great. He's always he cracks me up. Though I don't think where's that bottle of Statesman, buddy? I haven't seen that yet. I'm just kidding you. I would seriously. He told me one day he was gonna have to get me one. I told him no, don't do it. Besides, I got some Yellowstone here now, but all right. Well, what else we got? What other questions?
You know, I wanted to touch. We were talking about marketing our product, and Tim mentioned that we use Facebook Marketplace, but on Facebook Marketplace, there's like 30 private. What do they call them, Tim? They're like they're off a marketplace, but they're private pages, and we can advertise on all of those too, and we get a lot of
the community source.
Yeah,
communities.
Yeah.
We got a lot of those in the area, and we have Saratoga Springs, which is about 35 miles down the road, and those are some high class, high end people, so they're always looking for hardwood. So that's one of the great sources we have for getting rid of our hardwood.
Those people are nuts.
On groups.
That's it. Groups.
Yeah.
They have classified ad ones. You can put them on those, and local buy, sell, trade. I've got a little bit off of those.
Yeah.
Right on. Grizz.
Right
So
on.
you've got Ben over at Dusty Roads. So Dusty, you're probably like me. I can't put my channel in the comments because I'm not logged in.
Yeah, I can't either.
Yeah.
Dusty Ranch.
So if you look up Dusty Ranch, you'll find Ben. He's got a great channel. And then you got John Davies, right? I get your name messed up. Davidson. I don't know why. Davidson. That's Davidson's All Natural Gym. And shipping costs are through the roof. I bet he's talking about the bourbon and not lumber. And then my channel, you can find me by just looking up The Old Jarhead. Yeah, that's what he was talking about. That's okay. Desert Hobo, if you ever come up and visit, or if I ever do a get together, I'll have some. You just have to remind me, though. If you don't remind me, I might not have some, but if you remind me, I will. Maybe we need to do a west. Now we've got some other guys over here on the west side, and I think Mike and I, we need to do something out here. And Jason and I are gonna do something one of these days. So we'll definitely have to do that. It might just me filming other people if I'm still hobbling around. But
Jason's in between us. We should meet at his place.
Yeah, I've been there. I met with him back in November, early November. So Jason's a great guy. If you haven't seen his channel, he's not on here today, but he's Northwest Sawyer. But any cookie cutters, cookie cutters are not a waste of time, but I think those are seasonal like everything else, right, guys? You know,
Yeah.
weddings, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Cookies,
Spring and
Come
fall.
on.
cookies traditionally for us, they split no matter what.
Yeah.
We have one customer that buys them and he submerses them in mineral oil until they stop bubbling. And he says that stops them from splitting, in case anybody's wondering.
I'm wondering.
Never tried it. Never tried it. But he submerses them in mineral oil until they stop bubbling and pulls them out. And he says they won't split.
I'm gonna try it.
It's also
I
what's
have
the D something another alcohol, denatured alcohol. That's pretty
Denatured.
good also.
I've heard that. Yep.
I've done. Mike's killing us over here, but so Mike's mean to me. I got a cold. Don't make me laugh.
Watch out for Grizz. He'll try to swindle you out of your mill. He's done it to me multiple times.
Well, you can't blame him, right? I mean, you know, who doesn't want
Can't
to
blame a man for trying.
Yeah, but I will tell you, I've had good luck. I've got a couple tables up at my cabin that I made out of an old chopping block, and I think it might be better to cut rounds and let them dry a bit and try to mill them. And I don't like to mill dry at all. If you watch my channel, you know I want to mill dripping wet. Fall that tree right on top of my sawmill, and I'll start milling it. Or my favorite one is I'll just stack my mill right up against the tree and just mill it right there, right? I want one of those mills. But I will mill dry if I have to. And cookies might benefit with a little bit of drying first, because I think if you mill them wet, I don't know, I haven't thought about this much, but yeah, the outside might dry a little bit faster, though it shouldn't. But I've had good luck with cookies. I've done some big ones. I've done some 2-foot cookies, and they did well. So
I found
Hardwood cookies.
softwood
No,
doesn't crack as much as hardwood.
that could be it. I've never done a hardwood cookie.
Steve at MSD making sawdust, he's been doing cookies. He might be a resource.
That's
Yeah,
true,
I talked to him. I talked to him a lot, and he's doing that was a special type of wood he was doing those cookies in. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Steve is. I actually was going to try to get him on tonight. So, Steve, if you're watching, sorry, it just didn't happen. But I was going to try to get out there. Desert Hobo says paint him, and he has a mill, by the way. So, you might be right. And I think Desert Hobo, I'm gonna say you are northeast, right? New York. Am I right? Let us know here. I know we've had this discussion before, and I always forget. I'm bad that way.
Yeah.
Never build green lumber. Oh, well, so this is it's a long-standing thing. There's a lot of guys that think you have to dry lumber out first. Well, first of all, when you cut a log, the ends of the log start drying right away, and you can anchor seal them, but it's still not going to completely stop this from happening. And what happens when you let that you cut that log and you let it dry, the outside of the log starts to dry first, and it shrinks. And when it starts to shrink, it has to pull apart because the center is still wet and dried yet. So you end up with dry on the outside, wet in the middle, and they start to crack and check. And eventually they'll check pretty deep. But these mills aren't actually designed to mill dry beams and lumber. You can get carbide blades. That's what those are made for. But the reality is that there's so many different things that matter. For example, on a green log, when you open up that green log, you're exposing all of the fibers for that entire piece of lumber to the air to dry. You now get to control how that dries versus waiting for the log to be dry and then hoping it's going to dry right and shape and do everything right and not crack and everything else. So that's kind of my short blurb. I'm going to let Rick and Tim go from there and tell you why not to mill dry versus milling wet.
Well, it's definitely easier to mill wet. It's easier on the mill, easier on the blades. We do mill dry lumber, but it's mostly we let logs sit to get spalted, like maple. We want it to spalt which is a process of it starting to break down. It's a fungus that grows inside the wood because there's a high demand for spalted maple. So, but that's the only dry stuff that we cut is stuff that's already started to rot. Everything else we try to cut green, only because it's easier on the mill, easier on us, and the blades last longer.
Right.
Well, spalted is in the yellow birch too, Rick.
Yeah, once in a while.
Yeah, you get blue stain, really nice blue stain in a ponderosa if you let it sit for a while. But you know, the other thing is dry wood is harder. And you get into some dry wood, even with the bigger mills with more power. Boy, I'll tell you, stand behind my mill when you're running into some hard dry stuff. I milled 40,000 board feet of dry Doug fir and ponderosa about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was almost 500 board feet of log, and I was changing a band every single log, sometimes before I finished the log, and the bands were getting so hot in the cut that there was nothing I could do to solve that problem. Now, I will tell you a little secret I learned from Jake Dean, who's in Georgia, Custom Sawyer on Facebook. He's also got a channel that he doesn't do much with, but Jake's one of the most experienced sawyers I know. He actually said, turn the lube off, mill them dry. But again, you're not going to get as much life out of that band milling a dry log. So I don't know. What about you, Mike?
I mill both green and dry Doug fir because a lot of what I've been milling lately is dead and dying.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to get it as soon as I can because I prefer to do it before it dries out. For the reasons you guys all mentioned, dry lumber, it's slower cutting, it's harder to cut, it's harder on blades, and the sawdust is more likely to blow up into the air. Whereas if it's green, it's heavy, it falls to the ground, and you don't get all that dust in your face and in your lungs.
Yep.
So definitely dry, except for pine, like Eric was saying, it's nice because it turns blue, makes good colors. But also, there's some construction people who do framing. They prefer framing with green lumber.
Absolutely.
Because it cuts easier, it nails
in easier. Don't split.
Yep.
How about you, John?
I think I'm outnumbered here, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1.
You
But
mill them dry.
I'm the diesel drip guy.
That's right.
And I think all you guys are water, and I can mill it dry with that diesel. And when that blade comes out of there, as soon as it stops, I can put my fingers right on that blade, and it is maybe warm.
Really?
Yep. And my blades never get hot with the diesel drip.
Right.
Right. And I've been working on a video because I know people say that it'll wear out your belts, faster. So I thought, okay, I'll take my Wood-Mizer $30 Wood-Mizer belt and my 2 band wheel belts, which are $14 a piece, and I'll see how much I get out of diesel. And I broke a blade, took a big chunk out of both sides of it, and it ripped the, drive belt. So I don't think the diesel is hurting my blades any,
Right.
because I think I'm going to break it and take a chunk out of one of those belts before I ruin one with diesel drip anyway.
Right.
And it's a $40, $50, $60 investment.
Yeah.
If you can't.
I would agree with you on that. Also, you're selling your own lumber or you're pricing your own price. So you could add that in if it did make a difference.
Right.
So that's not, I don't know. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, and sorry guys, I'm gonna answer this question. I'm gonna run because I'm getting eaten by mosquitoes out here, and I gotta put the kids to bed. But yeah, green is the way I prefer to go. The off chance that I have to mill dry, I've actually got some oak right now that I haven't been able to get to. I spent about 5 months, and I'm afraid it's going to be pretty hard when I get to it. And that's really pine. I don't mind so much, other than the fact that Mike mentioned, it just gets in your face more. But that oak, you can really tell a big difference when it's been sitting for 6 or 8 months, 5 months, and it really starts to dry out, especially over the summertime. It's like trying to send your blade through a rock sometimes. So.
Been there, done that with black locust that's dry.
Black locust or hedge.
Oh, yeah. So one of the questions Grizz asked was about warpage in green lumber. So the truth is green is better for that because you're going to mill it. You're going to try to mill the stress out, do everything you can to get it nice and straight and flat. Then you're going to stack it and sticker it, and you're going to control the drying. And you can either strap it, you can put weight on top of it. There's all kinds of things you can do, but you actually can control the drying of that lumber now. It's going to dry more evenly. Instead of drying from the ends first, it's going to dry evenly over the whole piece of lumber. And because you can put weight on it and keep the air moving, you're going to get actually nice flat lumber out of it.
Hey, Ben, before you go.
All right. Yep.
You're the man to answer that question. It's on screen right now because you're the arborist. You're the one that takes down trees. Do you see the?
Oh man! Oh yeah.
Wait. I'm going to answer for Ben. Put a brand new band on.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's my answer. The fact is, I bought a pretty nice metal detector, and you guys may have a better answer than me, but I bought a pretty nice metal detector. There's going to be metal in logs. I know for a fact there is, but most of the time, the metal that I find, even when I was metal detecting, it was 4 inches below the surface, 8 inches below the surface, and that detector never picked it up. So, it's one of those deals where you've got a $30 band, and you can spend 30 minutes looking for metal and still have to replace a $30 band. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks, guys. We'll
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, buddy.
Yep, catch you guys.
Thank you, Ben.
Ben, we'll catch you later.
Thank you.
That was good. Appreciate you guys.
Yep. Have a good one, Ben. All right. Ben's a good guy, by the way. He's great. But metal detectors, whoever asked that question, I'm kind of agreeing with Ben here. I got to tell you, I have a video about hitting nails up in northern Idaho, and one of those nails was in the heart of a 18 or 20-inch ponderosa pine. So I don't think there's a metal detector in the world that would have found that big spike. I have 2, though. Cheap ones.
I have none. When
Wait. No, you do, John. You do.
Yeah,
it's big and it's orange.
Yep. When a customer brings me a log, it's right in the contract. You want me to saw that up if I ruin a blade on your log. I don't care if it's an insulator, I don't care if it's a stone, and I don't care if it's a nail. If I ruin a blade on your log, it's replacement cost, which is almost $30 now.
You're nicer than me. I am any foreign object, $40.
I've got to ruin the blade. If I can eat going through, one little nail, but a 16 penny nail and it's done. That blade's gone. It's toast. You can't. I've tried to resharpen those time after time, and you can't. But you can't run you're going to run a metal detector over all 4 sides, like he said, for 30 minutes, and then you're going to take one cut, and then you're going to run it over all 4 sides again. Well, your metal mill is going to set up the metal detector on 2 of those sides at least. And I just don't see it time and cost efficient. So my answer is don't get any town logs if you don't want to hit metal.
Well, yeah.
Get your logs from right up behind Tim's house. Go right up there, follow his ATV.
Well, we don't accept logs the first 8 foot. So we won't cut any logs from first 8 foot of veneer.
Yard logs. Anybody brings us a yard log, from their yard, we won't cut the first log. We tell them the first log, leave it home. We go 8 foot now.
Okay.
All my logs come from my own forest land. It's undeveloped. The only metal that might be in there would be maybe a bullet, but I've never ran into one. The only time I ever ran into metal is those couple times I reluctantly took those logs from my neighbor's yard. And what I did was I cut the first 6 foot off of the rest of them. Then I never ran into nails.
Yeah.
And Grizz mentioned that in one of his comments. That's the problem with those free logs. They can have nails in them.
Yeah, I will tell you on my remote jobs, I encourage my customers to use a metal detector. I even carry one with me and they can use mine, but I still tell them that that's not going to absolve you of having to replace a band if I run into a big nail in the middle of the heart of a log.
Correct.
However, my customers have found nails and been able to pull them out or cut that section of a log off, and it saved them money in the process. So the other thing I do is my contract says $40,
Yeah.
but I will tell you, I've had 3 times hit nails on a job and said, yeah, I'm gonna charge you for one. So the beauty of whether you do what I do or what anybody else does, you can make that decision on your own. My contract says one thing. It's kind of like the old military. We used to say you can add to, but you can't take away. I can take away, but I can't add to, right? So if I want to not
Right.
charge you a little bit, I can do that.
All right. So Grizz mentioned sawdust sticking to his tracks. Do you have wipers on your sawmill in front of your wheels on your tracks? Just
Yep.
curious.
Yep.
And Andy put up there he hit bullets. We've hit bullets. It doesn't dull the blade. Any
Yeah,
idea how those bullets? Any idea how those bullets got in the tree, Andy?
Was it you?
Well,
I could
us.
address Grizz's question about the sawdust on the, because he was asking about Douglas fir. I think green Douglas fir has less buildup, especially green ponderosa pine.
Oh yeah.
Because I think the water in it helps lubricate.
Yep.
And the dead stuff has more resin, or we call it pitch out here. It has more pitch buildup, both on the tracks and especially on the blades. On green ponderosa pine, especially the sapwood, also Doug fir, sometimes I don't even use lube because I think the water inside the log is good enough.
Yeah, you turn it off or turn it to a drip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Paul, that is an excellent question there. Has having a YouTube channel helped any of you guys with your business?
Yes. 100%. Yes. But I'll
Mike?
tell you, I think did I see you nod there, Mike? So
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I do something perhaps a little different in that I always direct because I have different customers. So my customers aren't mostly the same as everyone else's here, which is why I'm here, because I wanted my viewers to get to see what these guys had to say. However, to answer that question, for me, I can always point my customers to my YouTube channel so they can see the operation because they're going to be my crew because I'm 100% remote. So they can go to my channel, they can learn how the operation goes. And I have to be honest with you, sometimes, quite often, they want to compete with other customers because they'll hear me say, this is the best crew ever. And they'll say, you know what? I think we can off-bear better than those guys did. So, part of it is they get to see how I operate when I'm out there remote in the field. Part of it is they get to understand the operation a little better for their own knowledge. And then on top of that, I always try to add a little bit of education in my videos so that they can learn something. And really, I'm targeting a lot of the times I'm targeting my customers in my videos because I want them to know about anchor seal. I want them to know about, I want my logs green, about metal detecting, or I just did a video on log decking. And honestly, that's more for my customers than for a lot of sawyers because most sawyers already know that. Now, maybe the new sawyers don't, and so hopefully it helps them out. But for my customers, seeing a log deck and how simple it is and how you can build one actually helps them. So absolutely 100%, my YouTube videos and my channel help me out a lot.
I don't know if I've got any new customers from YouTube, but similar to what Eric was saying, I point my advertisements to my YouTube channels. I put some on the bottom, say, if you want to look at my operation, here's my YouTube channel. People go watch that. They can get to know me a little bit and find out that I'm different than the other guy who's advertising on Facebook, that I've got comments. It sounds like he's a little bit of a, how do I put this?
You got some comments in.
Character. But they can see that I'm a person. I have a story. People buy from people who they like. It's
Agreed.
like it gives them a story to buy from.
Yep, character, and you know what you're doing. I mean, I've watched some of your chainsaw stuff. I'm not a chainsaw pro, and one of the things I really liked was when you were putting a chain on a bar without actually loosening up the bar, and I'm like, really? I didn't know you could do that. So that helps, I think, too. What about you, John? You're nodding away, and I know Tim and Rick have an answer there too. But what about you, John?
I can see how it would help Eric's channel immensely. You know, you could make a playlist that just says for my customers, you know what I mean? And they can right to that and click through that and watch those. And man, that would help your business immensely, you know. But when Wilson mentioned the, you know, the character and it's showing you a different product, you know, lights went off in my head and thought, okay, I can see how maybe I need to be doing that. But right now I'm, you know, my viewers are sawmillers or somebody who wants to buy a sawmill or somebody who does have, you know, and that's not, I'm selling lumber. You know what I mean? If I could get the people who are, if I could make tables, then I could point people to my YouTube channel and say I make my lumber, or you know, but I sawmill, and then nobody wants to be pointed to my channel to sell lumber because they're sawmilling themselves.
They might.
Chances are they're sawmilling themselves, you know.
Well, but I'm going to tell you right now, John, the reason I asked to do this tonight is because my viewers, and good night, Desert Hobo, awesome having you here. Thanks, buddy. My viewers asked questions I couldn't answer. They want to know how to price lumber and how to sell lumber. So I guarantee you right now, there's customers out there that are probably thinking about checking out some of those videos all you guys have done, because that is a portion of our viewership. I've done some polls where I would say 50% of my viewers have sawmills, but there's a large portion that don't. So I think part of that is not your customers. So I think with Paul and Andy, right? You guys, and I should let Rick and Tim answer this too, but what you guys do, if you sell lumber, and I wanted to ask you that, and I didn't get a chance, but you really show how you produce it, just like Mike does, just like John does, just like Rick and Tim. And I think that's a huge value to customers buying lumber, because if they go and they watch one of you guys sawing up logs, and honestly, think about it, right, John? Like when you're filming your sawing logs, you're talking about all the stuff you're doing, how long it takes. You talk about different ways you're doing things to get more out of a log. If I'm a customer and I'm watching, you know, Rick and Tim, I can see exactly how they're making the lumber. And that's a big thing today, right? That's a big thing. People want to know, where does my beef come from, right? Well, where does my pine board and batten come from?
Yep.
What about you, Rick, Tim?
All right, so I say it hasn't helped our channel. We have customers. We put our videos out. We try to put our videos out the day after we shoot them. And the reason I shook my head no was because we have to film while we're sawing. We have to film while we're cutting trees down. And it kind of gets in the way sometimes. I like doing it. I like the YouTube channel. I like putting the stuff out there. But sometimes it gets in the way having to film it. And that just gets to be a pain. But I enjoy doing it. Now, we dropped a big maple the other day. And the customer that we dropped the maple for, he watched the video and contacted me that day. He says, I want the first log out of that tree.
Yeah.
So he told me exactly what he wanted, when he wanted it, and he was able to watch it the very next day. So it does help, but it gets to be a pain sometimes, you know, with the cameras and stuff. Everybody's got to admit that.
Well, I mean, you know, guys, you guys do something completely different than I do when it comes to YouTube. My videos are rarely very timely. Now, my latest video, that's from just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. That's the shortest time frame I've done a video in probably a year, guys. Right? I put out videos sometimes that are 4 months ago because because of my operation. My operation is very different, I think, because I'm gone and I might be 250 miles from home. I film it all, but I don't do any editing out there in the woods at all, right? I don't have internet anyway. So I film it all, get it on a drive. When I get home, by the time the mill's unpacked and everything else, I dump it onto my computer and it's probably, 4 terabytes of video data behind what I'm working on that day. So the only reason I'm close to being caught up right now is because I had such a long span of not milling with my hydraulics down and all that kind of stuff that I finally worked through all the content I had, and I've got some new content I'm working on now. So I will say, I do hope you can get to the day where maybe some of your videos take, 2 weeks to get out or more, because you'll find it's a great place to be. So I don't know about John and Mike, how long it takes for you guys to get a video out from when you film it.
I can comment on what Rick just said. It does help with sales. I have customers who come in and tell me, oh, I watched your videos and I really enjoyed that. And they do watch the videos over. I know it works that way. But as far as the time that it takes to make the videos, no, I make less money because I do videos just because it takes less time and I don't do as much production. So that's a little bit of a labor of love there, making videos. It does detract from the net business.
Yeah.
At this point, anyway.
Oh yeah. People are always asking me, how long does it take to edit a video? And I tell them, what, for a 16-minute video, it can take me 12 hours.
Yeah. I'll do maybe 2 or 3 logs in a day. Whereas if I wasn't doing videos, I could do a couple dozen.
Right.
And then 3 or 4 hours in the evening editing.
Well, Eric, it doesn't work real well when we put a video up in June and got 4 foot of snow behind us.
I've done it. And I'll tell you a secret. So anybody who's listening, who's interested in the YouTube stuff, hey, Arrowhead Woodsman, awesome to see you tonight. I didn't know you were here. That's another, he may be watching your channels. I don't know, but he's a long-time viewer on my channel. He's also over on MeWe with me, so we communicate a lot. So awesome to see him out here. He's got a little channel himself too. So, honestly, there's a little secret about YouTube. Is that in 5 years from now, they'll never know that you did it in June or July or December or whenever they did it. So
I think I missed your original question, though. I'll usually put a video out 2 or 3 days after I record it.
Okay, so you're like Tim and Rick then. You're pretty quick. What about you, John?
I like to be, 3 months ahead. There for a while, I had my next 3 months worth of videos already scheduled to be published twice or 3 times a week. Right now, I'm 2 weeks behind.
Wow.
I'm editing something from 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to get it posted today because I got behind this winter really bad.
Right.
Awesome. And then the question on the screen is, that's kind of a tough one. Do you have a kiln to dry lumber quicker? I have access to 2 solar kilns, but it's not to dry lumber quicker. It's to dry lumber properly. If you want to dry lumber quicker, you got to get an iDry or, some vacuum kiln to suck it out. I want to dry it slow and I want to dry it proper. So I have 2 kilns, 2 solar kilns in town that I run out of.
Yeah. And Mike?
I don't dry lumber.
Yeah. And Rick and Tim, you don't, right?
No, we do not.
Yeah. I'll tell you, an iDry would be wonderful, but I'm remote. So, excuse me. I'd have to be doing something different than I do. I mean, I'd love to get an iDry, and I'd have to dry lumber for other people. I wouldn't dry my own because I don't mill to sell. So, so yeah, that wouldn't be, on production. on YouTube production, I actually run sometimes 3, even 4 cameras. And, you know, you're absolutely right about taking away from the business. If I were, because I'm a busted up old jarhead, I don't do this full time like a lot of guys do. So I can do more that way with editing, because I might go out and mill on a weekend and then not mill for 2 or 3 weeks or a month even. Or I don't mill in mostly July and August. I mostly don't mill. It's too dang hot out here. And that's bad for drying, by the way. So for those that want to know about drying, don't dry your lumber in the Tri-Cities in August. That's the desert, right? Don't do it because it's not going to dry well. But so for me, I can run 2, 3, 4 cameras. I will at least run 2, but I've been working on 4. And that just means that my editing time is far, far greater than if it were 1 or 2 cameras, right? I mean, when I do a video where I talk to the camera and I can just do that, well, I can get those out real quick. But Grizz, you mentioned about, doing voiceovers. That's what I had to learn. When I'm out production milling, my customers don't pay me to stand and talk to a camera. So I can't. I've got to get the mills up, get the mill going, get the logs done, and then get the heck out of there. So I got to do those voiceovers. So the only time you see me do where I'm not doing voiceovers is usually up at my own property where I can do it, because it doesn't matter how long it takes, But now I will tell you, once I'm done with this gig I'm on now for a couple more months, once I've done that, then I can get back to putting out 3 videos a week like I used to. But right now, getting out 1 a week is about my limit, and it's just because of I saddle myself with more work than I should, probably, right? Just one run camera, but I like to do 3 or 4, so it takes away. You couldn't do it, and don't think that YouTube pays enough to do it if it wasn't something you enjoyed.
No, not me.
Hey,
but
$3 today. Come on.
You're saying you're running 4 cameras, but you're getting a lot higher quality video too with those 4 cameras than I am. You know what I mean? Running my 1 camera and doing a little bit of editing. I know I would rather watch your videos than mine, because I can't hardly get through my videos, and I know they suck, but I do not want to take the time to run 4 cameras and the time to edit them,
right?
And I'd rather, somebody asked me the other day, why do all you film is rotten logs? Why are you only filming rotten logs? And I thought about it, and I thought, man, I don't just saw rotten logs. I saw good stuff all the time. And I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, I saw good stuff for my customers all the time, but I don't have time to film my customers. When the customer says, hey, can you cut this up for me? He doesn't say, oh, and go ahead and add 3 days so you can film it. Nobody wants to do that.
Well, it doesn't. I'm gonna give you a little insider's trick. So I don't slow down for my customers. I won't. So what I do is I take breaks, right? Everybody takes a coffee break, right? So what I do is I have a magnet mount that I got from Ace Hardware, and that thing is so strong I can't pull the magnet off my mill unless I slide it and scratch the paint, right? Trust me, I know I have done it. But so what I do is I mount that where I want that secondary camera or that tertiary camera to be. And then once those cameras are set up, I set up my main camera to catch the whole operation. And then I turn that camera on, I turn the other 2 on, then the clock starts and I start milling. And I don't touch those cameras for 2 hours. So if the batteries die, too bad. Batteries are dead. You lost whatever video you lost. Now that's why I went to a juice box. That's thanks to Steve over at MSD Making Sawdust. Yep. He told me how long he was getting on juice boxes, and I was like, dude, I got to go that route. And I always have a link in my description for those. But I can get a full 8-hour day of milling on 1 camera with a juice box and a 512 gig SIM card, right?
Yep.
But the 2 little cameras that I have, a 9 and an 11, I'm going to get another 9 or 10, I think. Those are, if the battery dies, too bad. But when I take a coffee break or I take my lunch, I immediately pull the batteries, stick new batteries in so that they're ready to go for my next session of 2 hours. And that's how I do it. So the editing time all comes later, and that's why it takes me so long to get a video out, because now I've got 3 or 4 streams of video on hard drives that I got to transfer to my computer, get them organized, right? You'll, like if you ever saw my drive, it would say GP9, GP10, GP11, right? Because that's what I'm using. And it would be like, Mike's milling job, GP 9, 10, 11. And then I can grab those and move them in. So that's how I do it. How do I deal with camera vibration? My GoPros don't care about the vibration. They don't care. So, and if anybody wants to know, this includes Tim, I'd love to get you a camera. We need to start a GoFundMe for Rick and Tim so they can put a GoPro right on it. I'll tell you, you put a magnet mount on an extension for like a little GoPro and stick that out in front of your mill on the head or something. It's great. It's awesome. And I think you do that, don't you, Mike?
I tried it one time and it didn't like the vibration, but it was an old action camera.
Oh, yeah. No.
I have problems with my main cameras just on tripods next to the mill, vibration from the ground, but I edit the vibration out in the software.
Yeah, I what I do is I move it. My cameras are rarely my main camera, which is a GoPro 10 with a media mod, that normally is far enough away that on wide I can catch the entire mill. So I try to keep that away from the mill, but I find my GoPros don't care. So my GoPro 9, it often sits on the head above the log, pointed down at the log, or it's on my mill head. And this is all developed over, some years of doing this where, I used to just carry it. So like 2 years ago, if you saw any of my older videos, which really sucked, frankly. Sorry to anybody that's watched them and liked them. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I'm never like what I make. I think it needs to be better. But I used to just grab it. It was a weak magnet mount, and I could just grab it off the control and just like point it around at stuff. And sometimes I'll do that, right? You could do it with a cell phone. I've done it with a cell phone where now my mill, like John's, it runs itself, right? So I can just, and I don't think do you have the power feed on the LT15, Mike?
No.
See, you don't. So that makes it harder for you and Rick and Tim in that you got to push like I used to have to on the 10. But on our mills, we can mount them, and then I can also hit forward, turn the volume up, which is what I call my speed dial, and then grab my cell phone, turn it on, and walk around and video that way too. So it's a little different for me. What you got to do is trick your wife into coming out and doing it for you.
Well, I do all of our special effects. Thank you.
I could say something there, but I'm not going to risk.
He's only lost 3 fingers in the last 2 years.
Oh, good Lord.
We used GoPros early on, Eric, and we weren't fans of them. But like you said, you're using a GoPro 9, and ours were way back, probably 10 years ago.
I'm using 9s, 10s, and 11s.
Yeah, so it's just like cell phones. They just keep upgrading and upgrading and upgrading. But it'd be one thing if GoPros only cost $59, but they're not cheap.
Yeah, no, you're looking at, I think I paid $400 for my GoPro 10. By the time I put the media mod on it, that's another couple hundred, $250. I probably paid $350 or $400 for my 11. So yeah, they're expensive, guys. And that's one of the things, and I'm going to throw this out there for all of the channels out there. So this goes for anybody who watches Rick and Tim or Mike's or John's channel. I have some guys, Nicola Myers, awesome guy. If you ever watch this, Nicola, this is a shout out to you. Thank you. He's done like 3 super thanks in a row on my videos. And I've had Dean over there on my lives doing some super stickers, and I've had some other guys do super thanks. Honestly, folks, if you're watching, that really helps, because if you just heard what I said, paying for a $400 GoPro, if you're a monetized YouTube channel with 10,000 subscribers making $3 a day, it takes a while to pay for a camera. So those super thanks really help channels out, or merch. So I know Rick and Tim, they've got some great merch out there. Honestly, John and Mike, do you guys have some merch? I don't remember seeing any.
I don't have any.
Well, you need to fix
I have a mason jar that I fill with sawdust and put man glitter on it and sell it for $19.95.
that.
It's a big hit.
You got to get some merch, like this one right here. And I don't sell a lot of those, but when guys buy them, hey man, I appreciate it because it does help. And so,
I'm not into the merch yet, and I'm not into I can't afford the 4 cameras yet, and I'm not into the paying somebody to edit, and I'm definitely not into editing. If I can edit out half of my curse words on the video, I'm happy.
Maybe just leave it in there. You might do good.
But somebody I think it was Tim, right? Mentioned the maple spalting.
I did.
Yeah. Rick,
How is there a secret to get that to do that?
We cut the trees down and let them lay on the ground in the woods, and
You're doing
just
hard
have
maple?
soft maple spalts faster.
Okay.
But you have to watch it because once it starts to spalt, it can go quickly to rot. But what you do is you drop the tree, leave it in the woods, and then cut the ends off the log, and you'll see the spalting in it. Just cut like a cookie off each end, and then grab it at that point.
I've got some right here. Look at that cool. Look at that cool mug.
Yep.
In my community tab, I had a spalted maple log, soft maple, and I cut both ends off of it, and the spalting went all the way to the core. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. I got a 5-foot spalted, and I opened it up, and the core was not even close to spalted. I had an inch or 2 on the sides.
Right, and that's the pieces that you got to cut off and sell.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I want it all the way to the center.
I hear you.
So, but I'm working on something now. I honestly believe that I'm going to be able to spalt my own maple. I'm going to be able to spalt my own oak, be able to spalt my own white oak. I'm going to be able to spalt any hardwood, except for maybe walnut. I'm going to try it and make the spalting in there with spores, with fungus spores.
Does walnut really spalt though?
I don't know. I'm going to find out. I'm going to spread some spores over it.
Yeah, I don't think it does. Well,
Well,
guys,
spalting is actually a fungus that is breaking the log down. And if it goes too far, you end up with punky wood.
Right.
But
I plan on cutting it into lumber and into whatever you want, 5/4 or 2-inch lumber, and adding the fungus to the top of the lumber.
Gotcha.
And drying it real slow, covering it so no wind gets in there and I don't know how long that's going to take. The guy says a couple weeks, just to get the spalting into that wood.
Right. Well, let us know how it works out.
I'm really, really ready for that to work out.
That would make good video content.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. A long process though, I think.
Grizz mentioned pricing a GoPro. I will tell you something. I did start with one of these. That's a Vivitar, like a GoPro.
Oh my God.
And actually, it didn't do poorly under certain circumstances. I called it a crappy camera. It was about $90. I actually got it free, but I looked them up online. You can buy replacement batteries for these. You can put a different SIM card in them. They do work. They're not quality like a GoPro, so I wouldn't mount them to a sawmill. But if you wanted cheap cameras that, almost a throwaway camera that you could get 4K. I don't film in 4K, but 1080p, which is good enough for high def, they're like $90. You could do it that way too. I wouldn't put it on the sawmill, but you could put it close. Put it that way. So, well, guys, I don't know about you, but hard to believe we've been at it for 2 hours.
2 hours.
Holy cow.
Nice. Nice.
Well, I appreciate everybody showing up. I think it was a good discussion.
I think it was too. I think we ought to do it more often, actually, because that was fun. And I learned a lot from everybody. You know, Wilson's idea about YouTube does help an average. You know what I mean? I just learned a lot. I got a whole page full of notes here, you know, thinking, oh, that might work. You know,
Right on. Well, we'll definitely have to do it again. And you know, I was thinking I should probably get this software. We all should probably do it, and then we can all share the love, as I always like to say, the YouTube love. Because you know, we can all host and do the exact same thing. And I think it'd be fun to do it like once a month or something. You know, I think a lot of our viewers watch multiple channels. The Arrowhead Woodsman there, he came right out and said, you know what, I watch all your channels. If Desert Hobo doesn't, he's going to, right? You know, there's other guys out there that are, and I think it's great. I think it's fun too. And next time I'll have bourbon instead of coffee, but I was fighting a cold. So.
Now, Eric, before we go, one thing I'd like to mention: you have the mobile sawmill service where you're sawing other people's logs, and I got to say, after our experience yesterday and this morning, I envy you. We were looking for clear white pine, and we cut into 2 giant white pine logs and ended up with nothing but red rot.
Oh,
when you're sawing somebody else's logs, it's like, oh, red rot, that sucks for you.
Well, first of all, ponderosa pine and Doug fir, I've never even heard of red rot. So,
oh my gosh,
I don't run into rot in anything typically. So, I mean, I'm in the look, guys. Let's be honest, Mike too. We're in the land of big timber, big Doug fir. Doug fir can be monster logs. Doug firs can be huge, and Mike's down in redwood country too, though you can't probably get redwoods to mill, but he is down in redwood country. But you know, ponderosa was named ponderosa because it's so big. I've got a 4-foot ponderosa on my property, right? Like, I mean, you know, if I ever wanted to mill that log up, if it starts top dying like I thought it was at one time, I'd have to get a 5-foot chainsaw bar and have somebody else mill it for me because it's too big to put on my mill, or at least quarter it, right?
Yep, quarter it.
And I've done that. But, you know, we live in the land of big trees and big logs. The only time I've run into rotten anything was black locust that was in like a farmer's field that he probably overwatered and let die and rot for years. I don't know about you, Mike. You ever run into any rot?
I've run into white speck, which is a kind of a fungus that causes the rot. They do rot, but you usually know. They usually have conchs on the outside, or you can see white speck on the end.
Yeah.
But I only mill baby trees because that's the only thing that fits on my mill.
Give it a few years. I think I owned my manual mill for 5.5 years before I moved up to the big mill. And man, I'm telling you, there's nothing better than a big hydraulic mill. It's just, life is good. I mean, my back is smoked, right? I can't be rolling logs too much anymore. But I'll tell you what, my mill loads the logs, it rolls the logs. It doesn't make my coffee or pour my bourbon, but it does everything else.
Yeah, I ran a Norwood for like 3 years, you know, before this, and you know, it was just a push mill, and there's nothing wrong with that. I made a lot of lumber with pushing mills, you know, a lot of lumber.
Then you got spoiled and you bought a hydraulic mill.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a lot easier, but man, that push mill, there's something to be said for that. You know, I don't feel the lumber anymore when I'm cutting it, you know, and you kind of miss that on that push mill. You know what I mean? You feel every bit of that, you know, lumber. You know, if there's red rot in it when you're cutting through it, you know what I mean? You can feel that, and that was an enjoyable part of it. You know, rolling that log over by hand was not very enjoyable, you know, but feeling that lumber and knowing what you're going to get out of that was really fun. But I'll be quiet and let you guys go now. It was fun.
Yep. A lot of fun, guys. Thanks, Rick and Tim,
Sounds
for
fun.
doing this over at Two Brothers Outdoors. You guys are awesome, man. I appreciate your hosting tonight.
Well, we appreciate
Thank you,
everybody
for
showing up.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Rick.
Mike and John and Ben earlier. Thanks for joining us, guys. I do appreciate it because I like to, somebody asks a question, I want to make sure we get the answer for them. So
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
Yeah,
right on.
appreciate you inviting us.
Bourbon 30, is that what we're saying?
I guess that's what we're saying.
Yep.
Right on. You guys
All
have
right.
a good
All right,
Have a
guys.
good night, everybody.
Good
night.
night.
Have a good night out.
All right, guys.
All right, night.
Pull the trigger, Tim.